The journey of the American sailor, Sammie and Doughboy, is one of uncertainty, fraught with peril and danger. The United States entered World War I in 1917, 3 years after most of the rest of the world was engulfed in the first truly global conflict in history. The tide of American public opinion against Germany had turned with Germany's Zimmermann telegram that sought to encourage Mexico to declare war on the United States, and Germany's unrestricted submarine attacks on merchant shipping worldwide. President Woodrow Wilson's hand was forced, and he addressed Congress on April 2, 1917, asking for a declaration of war on Germany and the Central Powers, saying the world must be made safe for democracy. When war was declared on April 6, 1917, 73,000 men volunteered for service, and many more were conscripted for the war effort through the Selective Service Act. By the armistice of World War I on November 11, 1918, almost 4.8 million Americans had served, with over half of them being draftees. During this massive buildup of American Expeditionary Forces, also known as the AEF, soldiers trained at an ever-growing number of camps across the United States and in Europe. To match this growth in troop strength, more material was needed. Manufacturing of planes, ships, weaponry, and all other supplies necessary to win the war had to be made at an accelerated rate as American industry retooled for war. It was on these new ships that the United States Navy moved millions of men and material across the Atlantic Ocean at a pace that is stunning even by today's standards. For young men and many women across America, it was time to say goodbye to loved ones and begin life in the AEF. Americans embarked for Europe not knowing what to expect or when they would be home. But ultimately, they knew they would not be back until it's over there.
And we won't come back till it's over there.
When the Americans entered the trenches in World War I, the Allies referred to them as Yanks or Sammies. Back home, they were known as Doughboys, and they carried that name with them to the front lines. For French General Ferdinand Foch, the supreme Allied commander during World War I and the Allied powers in Western Europe, the Doughboys were exactly what were needed. And by the summer of 1918, about 1.5 million American soldiers were in France. Most had received scant training before boarding their ships, but they were fresh. What the U.S. Army lacked in experience, it made up for in unit cohesion, size, valor, and an eagerness to fight. General John Pershing, commander of the American Expeditionary Forces, demanded that the AEF fight as a whole, rather than be parceled out to the Allied armies. The Americans got their first victory on May 27th, when General Pershing sent elements of his First Army to help stop the German offensive, while regiments from the U.S. 1st Division, backed by French tanks, attacked the German-held village of Cantigny. U.S. troops quickly took the village, and then over the next 2 days held it against German counterattacks, at a cost of 1,067 U.S. casualties. As the 1st Division history puts it, the battle was America's first commitment in blood to democracy in Europe. The American Doughboys would test their mettle over the next 41 days as they fought the Second Battle of the Marne, staving off the Germans. They were then victorious when they attacked Belleau Wood, followed by Chateau Thierry, but at a heavy cost of 10,000 casualties, including 1,811 killed. The fierce fighting demonstrated the American will to fight, and Belleau Wood would become a legendary chapter in the U.S. Marine Corps lore and history. The American Doughboy brought the Allies out of the trenches and on the offensive, and on August 30, 1918, the AEF took control of their own 90-mile-long sector along the Western Front. On September 10, American forces attacked the German salient at Saint-Mihiel and routed a relatively thin German defense. But there was no time for self-congratulation. The Americans had to immediately reorganize for its next and much larger offensive at the Meuse River and Argonne Forest, scheduled to begin 2 weeks later. Some 600,000 troops and nearly 3,000 pieces of artillery, plus 1 million tons of supplies, had to be moved 60 miles to the Meuse-Argonne offensive line of departure. And it all had to be transported on 3 roads, mostly at night, so as not to alert the Germans. The Meuse-Argonne Offensive, the largest battle in U.S. history, commenced in heavy rain on September 26. It did not go well at first. The sector, directly opposite a crucial supply artery, was the most heavily fortified German defensive sector on the entire front. What's more, the AEF's best divisions had fought at Centennial and weren't available at the start of the new offensive. 4 of the 10 U.S. divisions that launched the fight at Meuse-Argonne were deficient in training, knowledge, or experience, and the offensive nearly became a disaster. The Americans charged into the heart of the enemy's defense. Progress was slow, and there were heavy casualties. A worried General Pershing relieved some of his commanders in order to ignite a spark and gain momentum on the battlefield. Once the second phase of the Meuse-Argonne offensive began, the AEF fought more efficiently and more effectively. Even so, its greatest advantage was the ability to throw more and more men at the outnumbered enemy, smothering German machine gun fire with their flesh, as one historian put it. American persistence paid off. After 47 days, U.S. troops had advanced more than 30 miles to the north and 14 miles to the northeast, slogging past 3 German defensive lines, including the Hindenburg Line. By the time they reached Sedan, the target of the offensive, the Germans were ready to quit the war. The American Expeditionary Forces had lost 26,277 men, but were bursting with warrior pride. While the Meuse-Argonne offensive was part of a broad and simultaneous Allied offensive along most of the Western Front, General Pershing had no doubt that the American effort was the catalyst for Germany's call for an armistice. When the guns fell silent on November 11, 1918, there were still a large number of troops over there, which meant that most of our doughboys would not return home for months to come. When they finally arrived home, families welcomed their hero sons, fathers, and brothers, and were congratulated with victory celebrations and parades from big cities to small-town America. In a mere 6 months of climactic fighting, 116,516 American troops lost their lives. Nearly half were killed in combat, and most of the rest succumbed to influenza. Additionally, more than 200,000 U.S. troops were wounded on the battlefield. It was a heavy price, but America had helped to win a great and terrible war. President Woodrow Wilson called the victory a supreme historical moment. Although the name Doughboy first appeared in accounts prior to the Great War, it is the American soldier's bravery on a global scale that has made it forever fused in our victory in World War I. Lest we forget.